Everybody wants to know how much home they can afford. Well, if you're in the market for $1 million home, what do you need to be making in order to be able to buy that home? We'll talk about that next and break it all down with Bill. Welcome into the Smart Mortgage Show. I'm Ben George with Bill Litton of Cross Country Mortgage. He is a regional president there. And today, Bill, we're going to get into the numbers a little bit. I know you get questions all the time. Hey, how much can I afford? And I know what you can afford and what you should be spending is probably two different numbers. But I want to kind of dive into the specific situation here and try to break it down for people, because I know there's a lot of interest in, hey, what can I actually pay for here?
Yeah, and I think you've definitely hit on a key part already. It's, what do I qualify for is a totally different question than what can I afford, right? Mm-hmm. So you may be able to qualify for a whole lot larger payment than what you really want to put in your budget. So we got to be really careful with, the big question is, in my mind is, what can we afford, which is the way you posed the question, rather than what do we qualify for?
Yeah, 100%. So that's the goal today. We're in this video going to talk about the process that Bill goes through at Cross Country Mortgage with people that are looking to buy a home of $1 million, and talk about, hey, what should you be making in order to be in that ballpark to be able to afford a home like that. So hopefully this will kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and help you better understand the process and ultimately determine whether or not you are in that ballpark to be able to afford that $1 million home. So let's just start, Bill. Kind of where do you want to begin as we kind of get into this and figure out what that number is?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying house values have risen sharply over the last 5 or 6 years, and $1 million house isn't what it used to be. So I think the question's a great one because a lot of people fall into this category now, where it used to be like, 600 was a very popular number in my area for a family of 4. Now it's $1 million. So this $1 million house thing has become very normal. I also want to mention that if you look at the numbers over time and you assign about a 4% increase per year in home values, and you went back into the 90s and you looked at a house that was purchased for 200 or 300 and you assign that number, we're not that far off. So the $1 million house isn't that it's really way more expensive than it should be in 2025. It's that after the Great Recession and the housing market issues where houses stayed stagnant for a while, we just picked up a lot of what we did not pick up from 2008 through 2018. So we're kind of on track. So I think these numbers are here to stay for a while. Digging right into the question, Ben. So what is it that you need to be able to make in order to afford that house? And I think the big question there is also, what kind of retirement are you trying to fund? Because if you took a compounding calculator and you said, well, an $8,000 a month payment, how well can I fund my 401k? How well can I fund any other investment accounts, mutual funds, ETFs, working with a financial advisor, whatever that looks like? It's going to be a very different number at $4,000 a month, right? The difference is for an $8,000 payment versus a $4,000 payment. There's $4,000 a month that if you were to save that, it's going to be a very different looking retirement for you. So that's, I think, one of the big questions is, are you at whatever payment we put you at, are you able to fully fund your retirement and plan the way you want to live in retirement? So
yeah, I think that's a good point, Bill, because, and again, I know you talked about, that's kind of what you do with people you work with at Cross Country, is you want to see the full financial picture, get a better idea of what their goals are, because again, that kind of helps you get them in the best possible option for them to be able to achieve those other goals that they have along with buying that home, which is obviously the maybe the priority in this situation. But still, you want to make sure they can still accomplish these other goals, like saving for retirement. So the answer obviously is going to be skewed a little bit if you don't want to save anything for retirement, which I'm sure most people would say, hey, that might not be the best idea.
Yeah, if purchasing this house eliminates your retirement savings, we're going to, at the very least, we want to make sure that you're fully aware of that. Mm-hmm. and discuss that in your budget, because you might have some other reason that this makes sense right now, and certainly we're not going to stop you from that, but we want to create awareness and make it an educational, consultative process where you're hearing things from us that you're probably not hearing elsewhere, or maybe you didn't realize that you were putting yourself in that position and we might need to rethink things. So, the other thing, Ben, is maybe it's not that we can't fund retirement at all, but maybe now because of this new mortgage payment, you can't fully max out your 401k and get the free money from your company. Now, if you have to do that, that's understandable, but you should at least know you're doing it and say, well, when do I think my pay will increase enough that I can get back to doing that? So that's the first big piece of the puzzle. The other thing, Ben, that's, really important to note is this $1 million house is going to be more doable for somebody who has 20% to put down. Now, we do have options for less than 20%, but having, 200,000 down plus closing costs, that's going to be big. If you only have 50,000 saved, it's going to be very difficult. At a minimum, you're probably going to need to be somewhere over 100,000 to make something like this work for $1 million house. So having a lot of money saved to earmark for this specific transaction, 20% probably, and contrary, we say a lot, 20% is absolutely not necessary. For the $1 million house, not necessary, but not 100% of the time necessary, but definitely necessary a lot of the time, and definitely preferred and encouraged for a variety of reasons. At 20% down, your terms are going to be much better than less than 20% down.
And you said 20% plus closing costs. What would closing costs on average be for $1 million home?
Yeah. So if you're escrowing and you're paying a year of your taxes at settlement, taxes on $1 million house, 12 to 15,000. So you'll need to bring a minimum of a year plus homeowners insurance and some prepaid interest. So those are just your prepaid items. Add in your closing costs. So maybe 20,000 for prepaid, 15 to 20,000 for closing. You're probably 35 to 40,000 out of pocket for your total settlement charges. So now you're at 200 for your down money, plus another 40 for your settlement charges. So 240.
Okay. Yeah. So almost a quarter million there right at the beginning. Okay. So that's a good number to kind of have in mind as you're working towards this goal.
Yeah, definitely. And so the other piece that is going to be really important, play a really big part in this, is how much other debt do you have? So if you have 4 car loans outstanding and tons of student loan debt and credit cards, and now you're probably going to need more money down for the $1 million house, right? So unsecured car loans, student loans, personal loans, credit card debt. If you have let's just say, for instance, you have no other debt, then $1 million house with 20% down, roughly a payment with real estate taxes of about 12 grand a year, your payment's going to be about $6,200 per month for that mortgage. Let's just say that you made $240,000 per year. Okay. So 20,000 per month. And let's say your take home for that was about 60%. So 12,000 a month take home minus 6,200 a month in mortgage payments. That means you're going to have $5,800 to pay your utilities, buy food, buy clothes, put gas in your car, vacations, right? So 5,800 and save for retirement, right?
Right.
So that's not such a terrible picture. That's doable, but again, that's definitely going to affect your retirement goals. So be conscious of those numbers, right? So if, let's say you now have car loans, credit cards, a reasonable amount of other debts would be $2,000 a month. Well, now your total, after all expenses income, what's left over is now $3,800. Can you go out to dinner, stock the fridge, go on vacation, put gas in cars, maintenance on cars. Can you do that for $3,800 a month? I would say it is doable, but you're certainly going to need to be a really good budgeter. Your budgeting skills are going to need to be top notch in this scenario, because 3,800, where is your retirement savings in that? Now, when you pull out retirement savings, you're now getting really tight. That's a tight situation, in my opinion.
What if, and that number is based on 20% down, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what if let's just say we'll go to 10%. We're not going to work out every scenario. Obviously, you can kind of do some of the math from there and extrapolate the numbers. But let's just say somebody does go to 10%, which is I think a more common down payment these days, right? So what if that number is 10% now? What does that payment look like per month? And then we can kind of run the numbers from there.
So if somebody was to put 10% down on the $1 million house, now that payment's going to go up to about $7,000 a month. So you're probably about $800 higher a month. So that to me is getting really tight with trying to save for retirement, pay all your bills. One thing we haven't mentioned so far is just, expecting the unexpected, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know is going to pop out of left field. And it's not if the water heater breaks, it's when the water heater breaks. It's not if the refrigerator. So having money for all of those items, 10% down on $1 million, making $240 a year, in my opinion, is very tight. Very tight,
but I guess it's still manageable depending, again, as you said, what kind of debt you might have. So that number is probably looking closer to 300, maybe somewhere in that range. But I think that gives you a pretty good idea that once you start dropping below 240, things could get pretty tight.
Things could get tight. Now, one other consideration, Ben, that I want to mention here is if you have 20% to put down plus closing costs, 240, and you've got another 100,000 in a money market for a rainy day fund, and your retirement is well funded, that's a very different picture. Maybe you were able to, stuff away, squirrel away lots of money, and now you got $1 million in retirement, and you got 100,000 in a money market, and that to me is a very different picture because you've got backup funds for a rainy day. You're already really ahead of the game on your retirement. So there is no one size fits all. And that's what we try to do, is look at all the factors and how that puzzle would fit together for the individual person calling us and talking to us about this. But definitely, 20% down on $1 million at $240 a year might be dangerous, might be okay, depending on where you're at going into that scenario.
Awesome. Well, I guess you kind of a look at how those numbers kind of all come together. But again, it's different for every person based on your own financial situation. Plus, taxes could be different where you are versus other locations. There's a lot of different things that go into this, which is why you want to work with a trusted team like Cross Country Mortgage and Bill Litton, their regional president, can kind of help you run these numbers. Again, find out what the best option is for you, not just getting you into a mortgage so that they can move on to the next one. It's about making sure that all your financial goals are aligned, and your home being a big part of that. But this is good to know, Bill, because I think a lot of people thinking, I make $240,000. I should easily be able to afford a $1 million home. That's only 4 or 5 years worth of working. So it shouldn't be a big deal, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
I would say it's a lot more complicated than that if you want to insulate yourself from major issues and you want to take all the variables into consideration.
Very good. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us. Thank you for watching as well. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this. We'll try to do some more specific scenarios. And if you have a question for us, drop a comment down below. We'd appreciate that support. And if you want to begin the process of shopping for a mortgage and figuring out what's best for you, you can always text the word LEND to 21,000 to get in touch with Bill and his team. All right, Bill, get out of there on that note. Thanks for your insight and the breakdown today. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.
This program is for informational purposes only. Please consult a qualified professional before taking any action. Bill Litton is a loan advisor and regional president with Cross Country Mortgage, NMLS number 147060.